Okay, 3 audience members. Him, and me.
Have you ever had one of those mornings where you just wanted to stay in bed and pull the covers over your head and hide from the world? Well, of course, we've all had those mornings, and sometimes some of us even give in to them from time to time. But what about when those feelings of wanting to retreat and withdraw from the world become commonplace? What if it becomes a day-to-day occurrence? How do you know when what you're feeling is normal, depression, or something more? It's important to understand the differences in depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. These are 3 very different diseases with very different symptoms and treatments, and yet they're often confused and misdiagnosed. At some point in nearly every person's life, we get a case of the blues. Maybe we have a job loss or a bad relationship breakup or even the death of a loved one. All of these major life events can cause us to feel off. They can cause us to feel sad or down. But how do we know when the time span is normal for us to feel bad and when it's gone into something else? According to Dr. Tony Gillam, in his 2004 article, Managing Depression, depression is identified by length and severity of symptoms. So when those feelings of sadness combine for an extended period of time with other symptoms such as changes in sleep patterns, changes in appetite, loss of enjoyment of normal activities, irritability, mood swings. These can signal that there's something else going on and treatment may be required. Anytime a person is having thoughts of suicide, this is a time to seek help. Believe it or not, in the mental health field, depression is considered the common cold of mental illness. And so if this is the case, then why is it so hard for people to seek treatment? The World Health Organization estimates that about 5% of the population will experience at least one major depressive episode in their lifetime. And yet, we see depression oftentimes in ourselves and others as a sign of weakness. A depressed person may often feel great pressure to snap out of it, but yet when they're truly in a depressive state, they simply can't. Doctors don't know exactly what causes depression and why some people seem to be more predisposed to it than others, but it's thought that a chemical imbalance of serotonin in the brain could be the culprit. Serotonin is a chemical that helps to regulate mood, appetite, and other emotional feelings. When these chemicals become imbalanced, depression can occur. Fortunately, today we have antidepressant medications called SSRIs that help to balance the chemical serotonin. That, along with talk therapy, can really help people who are depressed overcome their depression. However, in some people, simple depression isn't the issue, and an antidepressant can actually make their condition worse. People that have bipolar disorder can exhibit some of the same symptoms of depression with one very important distinction. Mayo Clinic physician Dr. Gabriel J. Mellon explains that bipolar affective disorder is a disorder of mood that involves a depressive phase and a non-depressive or manic phase. So in other words, a person who has bipolar disorder is going to have a depressive mood on one end of the spectrum, and then on the far extreme of the spectrum, they're going to have a manic phase. During this manic phase, a person may become extremely excitable. They may have racing thoughts. They may have extreme amounts of energy and be unable to control it. They may not sleep. They may engage in risky behaviors, sometimes even life-threatening behaviors. They often will engage in excessive gambling or spending, and it can be very damaging to them financially as well as socially. Other people in a manic phase may actually have a paranoid or irritable mood. People with bipolar disorder are at higher risk than those with depressive disorder of attempting suicide. So it's very important that these people receive treatment. Different from the treatment with depression, bipolar disorder requires a mood stabilizer, such as lithium, to help the person to balance out those mood swings that are so devastating. Unfortunately, the euphoria that goes along with a manic episode is often quite intoxicating, and the person who has bipolar disorder does not want to let go of that part of their illness. It's important that the person understand that those manic episodes are not normal or healthy, and they do need to be controlled. Bipolar disorder can severely impact a person's day-to-day life, but with treatment, including mood stabilizers, and then further with a counseling that helps them to establish strong relationship and lifestyle habits, a person with bipolar can live a very normal, productive life. In the same way that depression and bipolar are confused and misdiagnosed, bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are often confused and misdiagnosed. But again, these are vastly different disorders. In schizophrenia, the person does not have the mood swings that are typified by a bipolar disorder. Schizophrenia is a thought disorder, while bipolar is a mood disorder. A schizophrenic is unable to regulate or evaluate their very thoughts and emotions. A schizophrenic is going to have paranoid delusions. They often have hallucinations. It's a very devastating illness. Dr. Michael Bergston, in his 2001 report, Schizophrenia and Psychosis, reports that it's estimated that about 1% of the population suffers from schizophrenia, and we do not know the cause. Although we do know that people do have a genetic predisposition to this disorder. Schizophrenia strikes people of all socioeconomic statuses, all ages, although it is typical that the onset of schizophrenia begins in the late teens to early 20s, but it can happen at any age. Both sexes are affected, and it is seen across cultures. The effects of schizophrenia can be devastating. Nearly 1/3 of people diagnosed with schizophrenia attempt suicide. Even more devastating at times is that it's believed that 1/3 of our nation's homeless are actually schizophrenic. It's very common for schizophrenics to try to self-medicate using alcohol and drugs because the pain and confusion of their delusions and psychosis are so powerful and overwhelming. The good news, however, is that schizophrenics can live greatly improved lives with antipsychotic medication. The bad news is that it's extremely difficult to get someone that has schizophrenia to agree to medication and counseling. Once they do receive medication, it's very important that these medications be monitored and carefully balanced. It is unfortunate that oftentimes, once a schizophrenic begins to feel better, they go off of the medication and the symptoms always return. In this very brief overview, we've touched on the symptoms and treatments of depression, bipolar depression, and schizophrenia. 3 very different mental illnesses with different treatments and prognoses. While these disorders are challenging, with proper medication and counseling and diagnosis, the people that suffer from these illnesses do not have to suffer forever.
Still here. Still here.